without being.
Alrighty, here we are, guys. I'm guessing that you had just a fantastic time watching the Keynesian economics lecture. And just when you thought it couldn't get any better, here we are at supply side economics. So, let's get this party started and make me sound a little more lamer. Alrighty. There we go. Alrighty. So anyways, supply side economics is the other fiscal policy approach that we talk about in economics. We have the Keynesian side, which is usually embraced more by people who are Democrats or liberals. Most conservatives will adhere to what is known as supply side economics, which is an approach to fiscal policy that hasn't been around as long as Keynesian economics, which was developed shortly after the Great Depression. This was developed more kind of back in the 70s and 80s and stuff like that. So anyways, Reagan is really one of the first people to be given credit for actually implementing supply-side economics, or at least part of the theory, I suppose. And basically, the whole gist of supply-side economics, and it's pretty much the polar opposite of Keynesian economics, is that a Keynesian is going to tell you that the government needs to be involved. The government needs to spend and spend and spend, whereas a supply-sider is basically going to tell you that tax cuts is basically where it's at. The government needs to take the smallest amount of taxes possible, and that's going to then encourage the economy to grow. All right, and that when the economy grows, you'll bring in more taxes, and that's basically the approach that a supply sider is going to have. Okay, so I feel like I've skipped something. Oh, there we go. So basically, here's the gist of a supply sider. Okay, so here's the size of the economy before the tax cuts, and here's the obviously the percentage that they take away. They're basically saying that if you cut taxes, the economy will get bigger. Okay? Because people will have more money to spend, it will stimulate the economy, more businesses will be created, more jobs will be available. And so even though you might take a smaller percentage of taxes away, you're going to have kind of a bigger pie to take those taxes from. Okay? So basically, like I said, reduced taxes will increase employment and therefore increase government revenues. And that's basically the gist, like I said, of supply siders. Okay? The other main theory that supply siders swear to is something called the Laffer curve, which was a theory produced by a guy named Laffer, go figure. Okay? And basically what he has theorized, and a lot of people support his theories, is that high tax rates, so jacking up the tax rate, does not necessarily equal more revenue for the government. For instance, I think I've mentioned before in class that during World War II, the tax rate for the wealthiest Americans was like 94%. You know, in the 70s, it was like at 70%, and you know, nowadays we're like at 38%, I believe. Okay, so we're like one of the lowest rates in recent history, I should say. Basically, the way Laffer looks at it is that if you have really high tax rates, like say you have a tax rate of 94%, that's going to be an incredible disincentive for people to work, start a business, and thus create economic growth and create tax revenue for the government. Okay, so basically, he's saying that low taxes, okay, is actually going to create more of an incentive for people to go and create businesses, create jobs, which will then create, like I said, revenue for the government. So here is the Laffer curve, right here. Here is the graph that kind of shows you the theory, okay? So let's say that you are at this point, let's say that you have a 75% tax rate for the wealthy, okay? So you're right around here, okay? So that means tax rates right here. There's your max revenue. So let's say you have a 75% tax rate for the wealthy, and let's say you have a huge deficit, the government needs more money, okay? According to Laffer, if you say jack that rate up to 90% or so, so say right here, which would be point B in our graph here, you will actually bring less money in, okay, oops, I'm having a hard time drawing, than you actually would have brought here. So in the Laffer theory, you could actually drop the rate from 90% here, okay, and you could drop that rate all the way over here to say 5%, and these graphs are just an example here, so don't take me at my word. And you could still bring in the same amount of revenue, because by reducing the income tax, you're going to create more incentives for people to go ahead and create things. Okay, so from the point of view of a supply sider: lower taxes, economic growth, more tax revenue. All right. Now, unfortunately, these are both theories that have been kind of put into practice, but they're all theories. They've never fully been put into practice the way that probably the people that came up with the theories meant. The truth is that both approaches have worked. Okay, Keynesians will tell you, look at World War II, look at the Kennedy years in the 60s, when the Keynesian approach was what was used to create economic prosperity. Supply siders will point to the 80s, when Ronald Reagan instituted tax cuts, and brought the United States out of a kind of economic meltdown in the early 80s. And so both approaches have been shown to be effective. Okay. The only question, and one, I guess, kind of going back to the supply siders, is that this Laffer curve here, the only problem is that you really don't know where you are in this Laffer curve. It's all a theory. Okay, so if you're on this side of the Laffer curve where this dot is, and then you cut taxes, you'll bring in less money. So I guess, like I said, it's a theory, so you never actually know what's going to happen. Okay, in theory it should work, but you never know.